Hello again, music friends. This is only my third video, but I already want to break from the mold. I've been enjoying listening to new genres of music, and I'm currently working on the script for my third proper video of ruining my algorithm. But as I've been doing that, I've been revisiting music here and there and bands that I used to listen to, and just enjoying the musical journey that I usually like to do. And it got me thinking a lot about bands that kind of have fallen off the radar for me. And I wanted to talk about one of those bands. So today, let's talk about the band Cake, one of the big kind of alt-rock indie 90s bands that, to me at least, I have no idea what happened to them. So let's ask the question and find out what happened to Cake. Yeah! Cake were formed in 1991 in Sacramento by singer John McCrea. They were pretty popular in the indie and alternative rock scene, but not underground or anything like that. If you were around at that time, you probably heard a lot of radio airplay. You probably had a Cake CD, something like that. They were known for being a little bit quirky, weird, sarcastic lyrics, not your typical rock songs. McCrea had a kind of half-singing, half-talking monotone about his singing style, if you remember it. And plenty of their songs also featured the trumpet, which is often unusual in rock music. I think, you have your trumpet, you have not straight rock, they took influences from country, from Spanish music, and you combine that with McCrea's, signature vocal style, and you actually have a pretty good recipe for an alternative rock band in the 90s. As a brief timeline to Cake's music, as I mentioned, they formed in 1991 with their first album in 1994, The Motorcade of Generosity. But it wasn't until 1996's Fashion Nugget that I consider at least their big breakout. That's when I kind of first heard Cake, even though I was quite young. The big hit from Fashion Nugget was The Distance, if you remember that one. Fashion Nugget also had the song Frank Sinatra and, I will say it, a banger cover of I Will Survive. All great songs, and once again kind of delivered in McCrea's weird monotone, half singing, half talking, with plenty of trumpet and plenty of kind of riff rock guitars, but a little funky as well. As I mentioned, Fashion Nugget wasn't Cake's first album, but I think it was their breakout. Following Fashion Nugget, we got 1998's Prolonging the Magic, with another hit, Never There. And then they followed that one up in 2001 with Comfort Eagle, with probably their biggest hit of this era, Short Skirt, Long Jacket. I remember Short Skirt, Long Jacket pretty well. I think that's kind of when I and a lot of others were kind of starting to come to age in terms of listening to music. You're a teenager, a younger teenager in the late 90s, or at least I was, and that's when I was starting to be aware of a lot of music, and it was the early 2000s that I really got more into music and started paying attention to it and started forming my tastes. So Short Skirt, Long Jacket, on that 2001 album, that kind of got me into Cake, and I ended up buying the CDs for their previous two albums. So overall, that's three pretty successful albums in the span of 5 years. Each album had a hit single to it, as well as a number of other singles that did quite well. But for me at least, that's kind of where they dropped off the radar. Comfort Eagle, out in 2001, nothing really after 2003 for me where I was kind of aware of Cake doing anything. And honestly, I don't think I've really listened to them since the early 2000s. And as I've been making these videos, I stumbled across Cake again, and it just made me wonder, what happened to Cake? Where do they go? Are they still doing anything? Which is why I'm making this video. I investigated it, I looked into it, seeing what they've been up to since, I guess, the early 2000s. Well, after the 2001 album, they actually released another album in 2004 called Pressure Chief, and then again in 2011 with Showroom of Compassion. Obviously, I missed those albums. And although they haven't actually recorded since 2011, supposedly they still are playing. By the looks of it, their 2011 release Showroom of Compassion did quite well in the US and actually made it to #1 on the US Billboard 200 and did pretty well in Canada as well. That's actually the best a Cake album has ever done, even during their top 3 albums. So for me, even though I didn't notice Showroom of Compassion, it was actually their best-selling album. I live in Australia though, so Showroom of Compassion actually didn't chart at all in Australia. So it's not surprising that they kind of fell off the radar for me and I didn't notice them. It was similar in Europe that Cake's most recent album didn't chart at all. So it did very well in the US and Canada, but worldwide it didn't do very well. So maybe if you're in the United States, you saw this video and you said, well, I know what happened to Cake. They had a banger album in 2011 and they're still touring and playing occasionally. You know, what's with this guy talking about it? But honestly, internationally, they have kind of fallen off. No one really listens to them anymore. Once again, that's what got me curious. All that being said, Cake's, output of their 3 big albums from 1996 to 2001, those were 3 very successful albums over 5 years. They followed it up again in 2004 with another album. So that's still good momentum. That's great momentum, and it didn't do quite as well as the previous 3, but still good momentum. And then they waited, 7 years to release another album. And I think that's where people, at least internationally, stopped kind of paying attention to the band Cake. They were on a good kind of track record, an album every 2 to 3 years, and then they wait 7. People, I guess they have a pretty short attention span, and that's, you wait 7 years, and now what? It's been 13 years since their last album, and no wonder, people think that they're not together anymore. People think they kind of just fizzled out of existence.
Damn, this is good. Who is this? Hey. Whoever you said, I like it.
All that being said, their last 2 albums, 2004 and 2011, they've gotten really good reviews by critics, well received, and as I mentioned, they've sold well in the US and in Canada. So there's no reason why they shouldn't have done well internationally. I think in a lot of ways it was that 7-year break for the 2011 album that made some people internationally kind of forget about them. With that, they've also only kept 2 of their original members. That's John McCrea, the vocalist, and you're not going to have Cake without those vocals. It would just be a different band. Also, Vince DeFore, who originally played trumpet and now plays a little bit of keyboards with the band. He's been with them since day one. Beyond that, Cake actually lost their original drummer, although their second drummer, Todd Roper, he played with them during their big period, left again in 2001, but is now back. They've also managed to hold on to their guitarist most of the time, Zan McCurdy. He's been with them since 1997, so the third of their big albums. Sorry, that would be the second of their big albums. So actually, if you're looking at it, although they've lost some very original band members and kind of lost people who have now come back into the fold more recently, if you did go and see Cake live today, and they're still playing live today, you would actually be seeing most of the original lineup who recorded at least, if not all, some of their big 3 albums, as well as, of course, 2011's effort, which actually has been their best-selling album.
Not bad, not bad. I like this stuff. How much is this? I'll take 2.
With all of this, I don't think it was the rotation of band members that really affected their popularity, because as I mentioned, a lot of the Cake sound comes down to McCrea's vocal style, and they did keep their original trumpet player, who's now on keys, who I'm sure was influential in the overall sound. Plus, although they did lose their drummer after one of their big albums in the early 2000s, he's back again. Same guitarist since the late 90s, and they were really, really popular in the early 2000s. So, I don't see that rotation of band members really affecting their popularity. Sometimes you get bands where you lose everybody but the lead singer, or really they're calling it the same band, but it's just the lead singer and the guitarist or something like that. And really, it's like, is this the same band, or is it just the singer doing covers of his own old work? But all in all, Cake are still playing. They're still playing mostly in the US. I don't know about Canada, but looking at their website, they still have tour dates and festival dates throughout the US. It's just that they're not traveling internationally. So for someone who doesn't live in the U.S., so someone like me who doesn't live in the U.S., how am I going to be aware of a band like Cake unless they're promoting themselves? In an era where we're seeing so many popular bands from the late 90s and early 2000s, bands like Blink-182 and Oasis kind of have a resurgence. Oasis is coming back. I think they're in the middle of a reunion tour right now, if not about to start one. And Blink, I think, just finished one, at least in Australia. Is this a time to kind of see Cake come back? And I don't think that is actually the case. Cake were great and they were very successful in the late 90s, but nowhere near as successful as bands like Blink-182 and Oasis were. And Blink-182 and Oasis, they had solid kind of breakups, especially Oasis, who seemed to break up and get back together every 5 minutes in the 90s. They solidly, stopped playing. And now it's being quite celebrated, at least for a lot of millennials these are some of their favorite bands, and they want to see Blink-182 and Oasis now come back. Whereas I think Cake still has a small, solid fan base that's still supporting them, obviously. So I don't think we're going to see this sudden Cake's back, let's do a reunion tour, because, well, I guess they can't really do a reunion tour if they never broke up. All that being said, they are in plans, or might not just be plans. I think they're actively recording right now a new album that's set to be released this year in 2025, a full 14 years after their last effort. So who knows? Who knows what the press is going to be behind their upcoming release this year? Who knows how it's going to be received? Who knows how much they might promote it internationally? Maybe 2025 is the year of Cake. It's January right now, so we have all year to find out. Let's see.
Hey! Wow!
Jacket.
Yeah, was that it? Well, you guys. Oh, there you go.